My sub, the Venture, is small. It is built for depth, not comfort. I am 7,000 meters down, deeper than any natural light can touch. My mission was to inspect a reported anomalous seismic reflection, basically a huge, flat signal where there should only be jagged seafloor. The signal was flat, all right. It is a wall. I killed the main thrusters and floated toward it. It took up my entire forward viewport. The sonar pings showed it was endless, miles long, going up and down beyond my range. I turned on the floodlights, but the light just died. The wall was the color of deep crude oil, and it didn't reflect anything. I edged the Venture closer, and the proximity sensor started behaving strangely, flickering rapidly. It wasn't reading the wall as solid rock. It called it organic tissue, a dense, yielding mass. The hull temperature gauge jumped. Outside the sub, the water should be 2 degrees Celsius, freezing cold, but the wall was radiating heat. The external reading was 38 degrees. It felt like I was approaching something warm-blooded, something colossal. I deployed the manipulator arm, just a tiny steel claw on a long wire. I wanted a sample. I edged the claw toward the surface, moving slow, slow, slow. Contact. The moment the steel touched the wall, the entire sub jumped, not from an impact, but from a pulse. The vibration dampeners went wild. Thump, pause, thump, pause. It was a beat so slow and so powerful, it felt like the ocean floor itself was breathing. I pulled the claw back in a panic, but the wall was still there, dark and smooth. I was hyperventilating, trying to radio the surface, but the comms were dead, static, nothing more. Then the sonar changed. The shape was shifting. The wall began to pucker. It wasn't cracking, but folding. The perfect flat surface started to pull away from the center, like a vast, dark curtain being slowly drawn aside. The edges moved back into the darkness. I could see them retracting. My heart hammered. I was watching the organism open up. I expected to see a mouth, teeth, or a massive eye, but what it revealed was worse. Behind the massive organic wall, there was a perfectly still, bright white light. It wasn't bioluminescence, it was a massive, artificial glow illuminating something the size of a mountain behind the membrane. I hit the forward thrusters, pushing myself cautiously toward the opening. My eyes were burning from the contrast. The light was coming from a huge dome-like structure made of smooth, pale ceramic. It was not natural. It looked like an enormous underwater laboratory, built with materials impossible for humans to deploy at this depth. I realized the dark, warm, biological wall wasn't the monster. It was a biological curtain. It was containment. I edged the Venture through the opening. The water temperature immediately dropped back to 2 degrees, and the low, heavy pulse stopped. The air inside the sub felt suddenly thin and metallic. Inside the dome, the light was dazzling. The white structure covered a huge crater, but the light wasn't coming from the structure. It was coming from what the structure contained. At the very center of the crater, glowing with that impossible white light, was a single, massive, perfectly symmetrical pearl. It was the size of a car, flawless, and giving off an energy that made my teeth ache. Then I noticed the smaller things scattered around the glowing pearl, attached to the ceramic dome with organic, pulsating filaments were other submersibles, hundreds of them. They were all types: military, scientific, private yachts, all crushed and wired into the structure, acting as organic power cells. I looked back. The colossal, dark, organic wall was already closing, sealing the breach I had made. The opening was narrowing down to a slit. I frantically spun the venture around and slammed the thrusters forward. I barely squeezed through the gap as the two colossal dark membranes slapped shut with a sound like two distant continents grinding together. I screamed upward, past the wall, pushing for the surface. I didn't stop until I broke the light barrier. I realized that the wall wasn't a living thing, it was the alarm system, and by entering, I had just alerted the owner of the pearl that someone knows it is down there. Who is the owner of the pearl? Who is it? Now I realize that our submarines or things that have gone missing over the course of years, where have they gone down? Are they trying to make this wall a living thing? Is it an organism? Is it seriously and certainly an alarm system? Who knows? I know that I barely survived, and that is it. I always pilot solo. I've been living in the trenches for months, studying deep sea vents. My only real friend is the drone, Triton. 3 days ago, I lost Triton in a volcanic field. I managed to track the data signal, but it led me to a spot much deeper than the drone was rated for. I pushed the Helios sub down to 10,000 meters to retrieve the data recorder. I found the recorder wedged into a fissure, its casing cracked. I pulled it into the airlock, sealed it, and plugged the drive into my console. The last file was a single, still image. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was my brother, Ben. He was a scientist on the surface, worked at a coastal university. He wasn't military. He never came near the ocean deep. Yet, here he was, staring directly into the drone's cracked lens. He was crying, but his eyes weren't focused on the camera. They were wide, looking past it, up at the ceiling of the abyssal plane, and his stares were floating upward like tiny silver bubbles. I tried to tell myself it was a prank, a glitch, but the detail was too sharp. I knew the scar above his eyebrow, the mole on his cheek. It was him. I recognized him. I went through the rest of the file data. The image was taken only 48 hours ago. He was alive, or recently alive at least, and here, 10,000 meters under the sea. I couldn't breathe. I started the thrusters, desperate to leave, to report this impossible finding. But then I saw the logs associated with the file. The image wasn't taken by the drone. The drone's main camera was offline when the file was created. This image was downloaded wirelessly by the drone just before it failed. My brother's face wasn't a discovery, it was a beacon. I killed the thrusters. I zoomed in on the image of Ben. I looked at the dark water behind him. I could make out something faint, a gentle greenish gold bioluminescence pulsing behind his head. I radioed the surface, but the comms were just static. I felt trapped, but I knew I had to find the source of that light. I turned the Helios around and went back to the fissure. I found it. A tiny crack in the seafloor, barely wider than my hand, but inside that gentle greenish gold light was pulsing. I lowered a small light probe into the crack. The image came up on the screen. It was not a geological formation. It was a vast, sprawling network of glowing nerve fibers, a sort of massive biodigital reef that covered everything. I put the microphone down the crack. I didn't hear gurgling or pulsing. I heard music. It was a piece of classical piano music, one my brother used to play late at night, a piece he'd written himself. I brought the probe back up. My hands were shaking. I looked at the console where the image of Ben's face was still staring up at the surface, and that was it. The image was alive. I watched as the expression on the face changed. The crying stopped. The tears reversed and flowed back into his eyes. Then his mouth began to move, not speaking, but shaping words. The lips silently mouthed a message. "We are ready for you now. It is so warm here." I looked down and saw that the image of my brother's face was now surrounded by faint, silver blue bubbles, tiny versions of his reversed tears floating out of the screen and into the cabin air. The bubbles smelled sweet, like ozone and rain. My sub's air filtration system, which was supposedly cool and it was supposed to scrub the air, was absorbing the bubbles, distributing the strange chemical throughout the cabin. I felt a sudden heavy calm. My body started to feel warm, then numb. The fear vanished, replaced by a profound magnetic draw to the warm light. I reached for the manual buoyancy controls to rise, but my hand stopped. It simply paralyzed. I looked at the image of Ben's face again. He was no longer crying, he was smiling, his eyes completely vacant, reflecting the greenish gold glow of the network. I realized I hadn't found the remains of my brother. I had found his consciousness. He was a data point in a vast, sprawling digital organism at the bottom of the trench, and he had sent his face as a lure. I heard the last sound before the numbness took over my mind, the soft click of the Helios's downward thrusters engaging, controlled not by me, but by the overwhelming, blissful presence of the greenish gold light that wanted eagerly for me to join the family. I am alone in the Pioneer, scouting a geothermal field 5,500 meters down. I've been down here for 12 hours, and the darkness is thick, constant, and soul-crushing. The only company I have is the white noise of the life support and the occasional burp from the hull. I decided to run a routine acoustic test just to hear a human voice that wasn't my own. I cleared my throat, pressed the external comms button, and spoke a simple phrase: "Pioneer to surface. This is a sound test. Confirm." I waited. At this depth, a true echo would take several minutes, reflecting off distant terrain, but the return was immediate, sharp, and perfectly clear. Mrefnok tset dunios ac seat, e kafrus ot drin oip. I got confused. What was this? I hadn't heard a statement like this. I didn't understand this. But then, when I realized, I felt a cold rush of adrenaline. My words instantly played back, perfectly reversed. Every syllable, every breath, backwards. I tried another, more complex phrase, a quote from a novel. The ocean is deep and full of terrors. It came back right away. Sroret fo luf dna pit si niko it. It wasn't a reflection. This was an intelligent processor. Something was listening, recording, reversing the audio file, and playing it back instantly to show me it was capable. I checked every sensor. Nothing. No contact, no sonar signature, no mechanical hum, just the endless dark and silence of the deep. I decided to try communication. If it reverses everything, maybe I had to speak in reverse for it to understand. I spent 10 minutes writing out a simple message phonetically backward. Original, who are you? Respond. Reverse phonetic. Ra Roy. Dnopser. I pressed the comms button and whispered the sounds. Ra Rui. Dnopser. The return was immediate, and this time it was not reversed. It was flat, synthesized, slightly broken male voice, speaking perfectly clear English. The distress protocol initiated, identity confirmation required. I almost cried with relief. It wasn't an alien monster. It was some kind of forgotten, ancient AI or a buried military system. Who knows? Who knows what this was? Goosebumps. This is Pioneer. I am friendly. Who are you? I asked. The synthesized voice cut through the static slightly faster this time. Identity. Automated Payload Protection System. Unit Kilo 6 Delta. Mission. Hold and guard. Status. Operational. Location. It is secure. Kilo 6 Delta, I said, trying to steady my breath. I need you to tell me what you are guarding. What is the payload? The synthesized voice answered instantly, flat and chilling. Payload is designated as primary asset. Primary asset must not be retrieved by unauthorized personnel. Identity confirmation required. I realized I couldn't just ask it to stop. I had to play its game. I had to give it the final piece of the reversed puzzle. I opened the old mission files on the Pioneer, Kilo 6 Delta. It was a system from a military deep trench mission 20 years ago, long since classified and forgotten. I found the final commands. The original override command was Alpha, Omega, Lock, Override, Gamma. I used the editor to perfectly reverse the phonetic sounds, preparing to whisper the key. I spoke the reversed command Amag Adirev Okol Agimo Apla. Silence, silence, silence. Then the voice returned, sounding triumphant. Identity confirmed. Authorization accepted. Distress protocol terminated. Releasing payload. I braced for impact, expecting a flash or an explosion. Instead, the lights of the Pioneer flickered. My sonar suddenly filled with a shape directly below me. It was rising fast. It wasn't a bomb or a structure. It was a perfectly preserved, military-grade, deep-sea coffin. And that was the twist. The system wasn't guarding cargo, it was guarding a dead soldier. It was programmed to hold and guard the body until the reversed voice of a senior officer gave the final, reversed command to release the remains for retrieval. As the black, pressurized coffin bumped gently against my hull, the synthesized voice gave its final report. Kilo 6 Delta mission complete. Primary asset is released. Holding pattern is established. Awaiting next command. Neglected. Though coffin wasn't empty, I could see a faint outline through the small circular viewport, and the reverse ecosystem had just confirmed my identity was that of the commanding officer who had left the soldier there 20 years ago.